the most memorable and awesome, so cool, fun as possible.
Whee!
Welcome back to our Overlanding 101 series.
We're Eric and Brittany Highland, and we're on our 8th year of full-time vehicle travel. Along with our 4-year-old son Caspian, we're getting ready to drive around the world. We decided to create this Overlanding 101 series to teach you some of the things that we've learned along the way.
Our goal for this series is simple. We want to inspire, encourage, and empower you to get out there and explore.
We have learned a lot the hard way through trial and error. We also have a lot of real-world experience. We've spent at least one night in all of the lower 48 states in the United States. We've done 2,000 miles in interior Mexico, another 2,000 miles in Baja.
We hope to educate you from our personal experiences, show you a little bit about what it's really like out there, some real-world application, and really lean into our personal experiences to help you get the most out of your overlanding adventure.
For today's video, our topic is trip planning. We want to keep in mind an overarching thought, which is overlanding is more about the journey than the destination.
And you probably have a destination in mind, but how you get there, the journey itself, is what really matters, and the tips that we're going to share today will hopefully help you make the most memorable journey you could possibly have. In today's video, we're going to share our experience regarding
how to select your route, select your campsite, what to do when you arrive at your campsite, a few considerations for the journey, and last but not least, some safety tips.
So let's get started.
In our experience, you'll usually have a general destination or at least a direction that you want to drive in. And unfortunately, there's usually a set amount of time for how long you have to accomplish your journey.
Our first tip for planning your route is to avoid highways. Whatever GPS device or mapping software you use, set it to avoid highways because the road less traveled is often the one you want to be on.
Always more interesting, always full of surprises.
All right, so hopefully you take our advice on the road less traveled. Like I said, take your GPS off of highways. And once you've done that, now figure out the total distance that you're going to travel and then simply divide that by the number of days that you have to make the journey.
We know this is fairly basic division, but that gives you an average of how many miles or kilometers you have to cover, which is a really good starting point. And you really need to give yourself a lot of wiggle room. You need to give yourself room for enjoying your campsite once you actually get there. And what about attractions and activities? I don't think any of us just want to drive and camp. That's not what the overlanding lifestyle is about. We want to leave room for surprises.
Also keep in mind that there's a good chance that whatever campsite you're going to is not going to be like right off your highway or off your road. Sometimes it could take you half an hour, hour and a half just to get to the campsite, and then you have to allow for that to get back. So those are things to keep in mind as well.
There's also been a number of times when we arrived at a campsite and it didn't end up being what we were hoping that it was going to be. And so we wanted to spend some more time going to our Plan B campsite or looking around in the area. There's also the possibility that the campsite's already taken and then that you will need to go find a different place to camp for the night. All of this takes time, and so you need to make sure to build in a buffer or you're going to end up stressed arriving at camp after dark, which is not ideal.
Or exhausted.
Right. Again, this is about the journey and we want to have an enjoyable journey. And so don't push yourself too hard to cover too much distance. Leave room for accidents and surprises.
Hopefully not accidents.
Not vehicle accidents.
So with all of this in mind, here are some tips for your route planning. The first is leave early in the morning. Like, you're fresh, you're alert. I know I do all the driving and I'm always telling Brittany, hey, can we leave at like 7 o'clock in the morning? Get on the road and get out there.
We also recommend that you set an upper limit on how many miles or hours you're willing to travel every day. I know as full-time travelers, we had to do that really early on because fatigue and burnout are real, and you still have to set up camp when you get there, and it would sure be nice to have some time to relax and enjoy your campsite as well.
And then don't forget that whatever time you've allowed, You probably need to add another hour and a half to the actual travel day, not the driving time, but the travel day, to allow for lunch, bathroom breaks, convenience stores, fueling, whatever, grocery stop, whatever you need to do.
We strongly recommend that you plan to arrive at camp no later than 3 p.m. This does so many things. If there's someone in your Plan A campsite or it's not what you hoped it would be, it leaves you time to find another one. And if you're traveling internationally, like in Mexico, where the roads just aren't as good, it ensures that you will not be driving at night, avoiding those potholes and those topes and all the animals on the road.
And don't forget to download any maps for any area that you're headed into or that you could potentially head into.
So we've talked about distance and timing and maps, and now let's get into how to actually choose your specific campsite.
So how do we choose and find our sites? We get asked that question all the time, and to be honest with you, usually it's because we have a friend who's actually traveled in the area and has recommended a site to us. Now, don't neglect that. If you have friends who have traveled in specific areas, reach out to them first. And the reason for that is not only have they been to the campsite, but they know the area around there. They might have some tips and suggestions for you. It's always the first resource to go to.
But if you don't have the inside scoop and you're working on finding your own campsite, there are so many tools out there that we recommend. There's Campendium, iOverlander, Gaia GPS, which has become our go-to, and there's even Satellite View on Google Maps or Google Earth.
And there's a ton of apps on the App Store, you guys. You can just search for camping apps.
New ones are coming out all the time.
Right, and some of them that have come out, I want to try and use more. There's one called The Dirt, and that's with a YDYRT, that I want to look into a little bit more. And then one of the old time apps that we've used is the All Stays Camp and RV app that just has a ton of information on it. So hopefully that helps you find your campsite, but now what do you do when you get there?
First and foremost, when you're arriving at your campsite, please tread lightly. We do our very best to always stay at disturbed campsites. That's an area where you can tell that there's tire tread and someone has camped there before. Maybe there's already a fire ring. We recommend that you don't make your own fire ring, but you try and find one and utilize one that someone else has already made. We don't want to go off the trail. We don't want to leave a trace. And we also recommend that you respect the space of other campers, especially those of us who are not in RVs. We're in overland vehicles without a built-in bathroom. That means that we're using the bathroom somewhere out in the wild, and we should give each other some buffer.
Just a little bit of space. All right, so when you arrive at your campsite, one of the first things you want to think about is how you're going to position your vehicle. And I think a lot of people underestimate how important this is. If you have a hard shell tent, you want to position your hard shell so that it faces into the wind, so that the wind is hitting the hard shell. If you don't have one, you still have to be cognizant of which direction the wind is coming from and position your vehicle accordingly for your campsite. Maybe use your vehicle as a buffer for your camping chairs and whatnot, so you have a little bit of a wind break. And then as far as leveling your vehicle, that's something else that a lot of people don't put enough emphasis on. We actually carry GoTreads, and we put them underneath our tires as needed to be able to level out our vehicle wherever we're at. If you're in a rooftop tent or some sort of habitat that's on the vehicle, that's really important. And if you're not, it still just makes life much more pleasurable. It's really easy to do. If you don't have GoTreads, you can use a rock. Sometimes that makes it a little bit more uneven, but the bottom line is get your vehicle level, position it correctly.
A couple more tips. Please obey the signage of the area that you're in. You might feel like you're in a hurry, but it only takes a minute to stop and read all the posted signs so that you know what the rules are for your area. And also, before you go to your campsite and potentially lose internet signal, make sure that you're familiar with burn bans in your area so you can honor those. And also be familiar with whether it's okay to collect downed wood in your area or whether that's forbidden. Again, these are all principles tied into treading lightly and leaving no trace. And with overlanding growing in popularity as it is, we all have a responsibility to work together so that our public lands stay open and don't get shut down because people are abusing the privilege of using them.
Yeah, we absolutely want to protect this lifestyle for future generations. So please take that seriously, and if you get nothing else from us, that's probably the most important thing about being at your campsite.
Remember, overlanding is about the journey, not the destination. And if you watched our very first video in this series called What is Overlanding, you heard us talk about how overlanding is much more than a road trip. And so we want to take a holistic, big picture view to what overlanding is and how we can make it enjoyable.
One of the things that we have to monitor all the time is the weather.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times we have been heading in a direction and then there's like this crazy front or something, and Brittany's like, no, that's not going to work, and we're both on weather apps trying to figure out where we can go to get past the front.
Right. And then there's fuel stops, so you always want to make sure that you factor those in, not only for when you need them along the roads, but okay, now you're about to go off-road into a national forest. Do you even know where your campsite is? Do you know how long it takes to get there? We usually fuel up before we go off-road so that we have a lot of flexibility and can end up at a place that's enjoyable for our family.
And as simple as this sounds, don't sleep on your grocery list, because sometimes we've been out an hour and a half off trail and we're like missing one onion. And we were at an event one time where I was walking around asking somebody if they had a white onion.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So yeah, don't sleep on that. Just make sure that whatever's on your grocery list, that you have it, double check that before you go.
Well, and that way you can stay out longer if you find a place that you like and you don't have to go back into town because you don't have food for dinner. It's always a shame.
We've done as well. And then lastly, if you're going international, don't forget to download any language packs from Google Translate. You can actually download those by language so that you have those ready for your use.
There are 3 considerations for safety that we want to share with you during this trip planning video.
One of the things that you want to make sure you have is some sort of communication device. We prefer to use a satellite communication device. That way it's not dependent on cell towers. As long as you have a clear view of the sky, you can text anyone anywhere in the world. We use the Garmin InReach Explorer Plus. You don't have to have anything that fancy, but you definitely want to have some way to communicate off-grid with people outside of your area.
We really like the Garmin InReach Explorer Plus because it allows for 2-way texting. You can also tie it to your phone so that you're not like clunking away on the device, but you can actually text on your phone. It makes it a lot easier. And Garmin also has an SOS button that you can press if there were to be an incident on the hiking trail or really anywhere else when you don't have cell service and you need emergency services.
And while we're on the topic of safety, personal protection is also very important. So one of the best things you can do is obviously don't leave a bunch of food in your trash, especially raw meat, anything with blood, anything of that nature with a strong scent. Carry some bear spray. You can have a whistle. Bright lights can often, push away potential scavengers and nocturnal creatures.
And then there's the matter of accountability.
Yes.
So we always say you should go in a group whenever possible, or at least one other vehicle. If you are going alone, make sure that someone knows where you're going and when you expect to be back.
And make sure that when you get back, you contact them. So tell them, hey, look, I'm going out for the weekend. I should be back in coverage Sunday at 3 p.m. I will text you or call you. If you haven't heard from me by Sunday at 5 p.m., something's wrong.
So those are our thoughts on trip planning, including selecting your route, selecting your campground,
what to do when you arrive at your campground,
and considerations for the journey and some safety tips. And we really hope that this Overlanding 101 series has been helpful to you so far. Please continue to give us all your hard questions. Leave us a comment and let us know what you think. If you have anything to add, hit the subscribe button, and we're so happy that you're here.
We have got more videos in this series coming up. We're not announcing which one next because this week we'll be at Overland Expo Mountain West, so we're still trying to figure that out, but rest assured, there's much more coming in this series, and we hope you'll continue to join us. Until next time.